Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're coming to you from the shop, not the studio, because we're going to do a how-to video. Today I'm going to do a video on how to paint wood, and not in any general kind of way, in a specific certain style. If you watched the Michael Myers Halloween diorama that I released, the porch was done with kind of a yellowish, look like varnished finish. It kind of looks like finished wood, but in that particular case I dirtied it up a bit, sanded it down to make it look worn. But you can also use that same technique without doing those things to make it look like finished wood, say on the trim of a 49 Woody. Alright guys, now before we get started, let's just go over everything we're going to use on this particular kit. A Tamiya XF60 dark yellow. Okay, but we are going to start with the wooden deck tan XF78. You could also start with XF59 desert yellow or XF57 buff. Any of the lighter tans, you can start out with this on this method, and then we're going to move to the XF72, which is just the brown. So, and then we're going to do some work with XF60, the dark yellow I mentioned previous. After that, and then at the very end, we're going to use some X24, which is Tamiya's clear yellow. Okay, so there's that. Today we're going to be working on just a little piece. Okay, you see here we got this little strip of wood right here. It's already been primed gray, just in case you're wondering. Okay, oh, that's what we're going to be painting today, so we're not going to need much. We're not going to be using the airbrush, I should say, but we're going to be needing several brushes. So you'll need one here just to put paint on. That's a nice one to do that. And this one here I'm going to be used for some smaller painting when we go to do some detailing. So you'll need something that comes to a good point, that holds paint well and disperses it evenly. A brush for dry brushing, okay. And lastly, a brush for blending. Okay, moving forward. Let's take this off the hemostats and set them aside. We don't need to have that on there. Great for them to dry upon. So I'm going to paint on some XF78. That's that wooden deck tan. Now, I mix my paints differently. I don't shake them up and down. I roll them back and forth. Okay, this is, somebody told me that it's better, but I don't know. I just work here. I need to put on the mad scientist glasses because I am 50 and my eyes are already starting to go for crap. So we're just going to paint this on here. I'm sure you all know what that looks like, feels like, and works like. So doesn't matter if you leave some of the gray showing through. Okay, that's not going to hurt us. There'll be plenty of opportunity to work that in or cover it up, whichever ends up being the case. I don't put on much paint at a time. I want the grain to really come through. This piece has molded grain in it. That makes it a lot easier to do than if it's just flat wood, but you can also use this on flat wood. You'll just have to either hand draw the grain on with a pencil before you start painting or during, or you'll just have to kind of wing it as you go through. And again, coverage doesn't really matter as long as you get a light coat pretty much everywhere. Again, some of the gray or background showing through isn't necessarily a bad thing. So we're gonna let that dry, and then we're gonna go to our next step. All right, now that that's all dried up, we're ready to put on our second step here, which is the XF60, the dark yellow. We'll give that a little bit of shake. Okay, so let's grab our brush again. Let's grab this brush. We'll get it wet with some clean water, obviously clean water. We'll just go in here, barely tap that clean water off of it. I don't want much of this. I just want to be able to touch up some areas basically that maybe the gray is showing through perhaps, or highlight some areas that you might want to have highlighted. Try and follow the grain in some of this. We don't want big blotches of it, you know what I mean? We want
This is basically like the consistency of a wash. You know, perhaps a little thicker than a wash, but not much. So
it's just really dry on there right now. So after we're done this,
ooh, too much. Really don't need much. You're just trying to put some differences in the undertone, right? You're not trying to recolor the whole thing or portions of it. You're just trying to break up that single color, really, is what you're trying to do with this method at this point. So,
and then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of
blend what we just did. Now with these Tamiya acrylic paints, you don't get a lot of time for blending.
But at this point, again, it's not really going to matter. These are just, they kind of do stand out, but that's not going to matter because we've got a wash and we've got some other things to go on there before we're done. So next we're going to get into that the brown. Now this one is the XF72. It's the brown for the Japanese forces, self-defense forces, and it's a nice earthy brown. And we want definitely a wet brush here and just a little bit of paint on the end of it there. Just kind of get it mixed up a little bit there. So we're going to find where the dark wood is. Now that's going to be where our knots are. And we're literally just going to paint around the knot a little bit and in the knot till the end. And then we're going to blend. We're going to blend just to kind of do that. Again, find some dark spots. Right? Blend. That one came off completely. That's not good. Too much. Over this one again and get there we go. That's a little bit better. So I don't know if you can see it from your perspective right now, but I'm just repeatedly going over certain areas I want to put this brown tone into. Just let it sit for a second, just a second, and then just kind of give it a bit of a wipe. Now most of it will come off because, like I said, this is like a wash. If you keep applying it, you'll end up with that hue on there, that color, almost like a filter, but very specific filter, I guess would be a better way of putting it. Let the paint a little bit thicker this time. Just trying to get it to hang around. Let that dry a little bit better. Yeah, it's looking good. So I'll get this finished. I'll show you a picture of what it looked like when I'm done with it, and move on to our next step after this completely dries. All right, it would appear that our piece has completely dried. It's looking really good, and we're ready to put on the next step, which is a wash. Now, I didn't show you this before. This is Liquid Pigments by Life Color. Okay, this is their burnt umber wash. Now it's just a red-brown wash. So instead of mixing up a red-brown wash or mixing some of the desert yellow in the brown or the tan in the brown together to make a wash, I'm just going to use this Life Colors Liquid Pigments. Okay, and it's just basically a brown-red wash. Like I said, it's very thin, and it's going to take a little bit of work to get it on here and do what we do with it. I'm actually kidding. It's about the easiest step you're going to take. You're going to wash the whole thing with it. That's all you're going to do, is you're just going to wash this whole thing with this brown. And it's going to settle into all the low spots. It's even settling into the panel lines between these, which is cool, which is totally cool. We want that. Sometimes you want to use this like on wood rather than a black wash, right? Because, well, it's wood, and wood isn't really usually black. Some woods have black striping in them, but regardless. So we've got that in there, and we can really see, and you can put more of this in certain areas that you want to, right? So it works out pretty well. So I'm going to finish painting this right now, and we're going to let it sit. You can see it's really turned to a red now. We'll get some of that color variation in here. So she's in there good. We're going to let it sit for a few minutes, and then we're going to do some removal, and then we're going to move on. Okay, well, we're all dried up from our wash now. It's looking really nice. Now, here comes the fun part. We're going to do a little bit of removal of that wash. You can do that if you're just using a normal wash with a very damp, well, not very damp, but a damp Q-tip, and whatever medium it is you're using to remove it. I just want to take the surface brown off, but not the stuff that's down in the grooves. Just a little bit. As you can see on this Q-tip here, I did not take off very much of that wash at all, because it settles in and it separates off the high points and settles into the low points like it's designed to do. So our next step now is to take our wooden deck tan, our XF78, okay, give it a little shake, and then we're going to dry brush that. Okay, now dry brushing requires a dry brush, no paint. So we're just going to touch the top of the paint in here and get a little bit of paint in the bristles. Not much. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's not a lot of paint in there. But then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of come over here, and I use these things here, these blue things here. These are biodegradable paper towels. They can be washed like 30 times before they start to disintegrate. So I find them really extra handy because I'm not always buying paper towel. So then I got this taped area. I just want to see what I've got, and I've been yapping too much, so I have no paint on the brush that's usable. So let's try that. Now we're going to come across the grain, okay, until you're sure that you've got just a little bit of paint. Right, you're just bringing up the high points. I'm going with the grain here, which isn't exactly what I want, because the brush bristles will settle down into the grooves, right, and then you're just kind of screwed. So get a little bit more on there. Sometimes I go in an X pattern. Sometimes, as long as I'm going across the grain, I'm catching those high points. And I'm not trying to paint this tan again. Okay, we're just trying to blend everything together a little bit more than the wash did and bring up some of those highlights, because of our next step. We're going to need it. Okay, so we've got that pretty much dry brushed up the way we want it. Again, I'll take a picture of this, and I'll show it to you here before we move on to the next step. We're going to let this dry, which won't take very long at all. All right, our dry brush has fully dried. Like I said, it didn't take very long. I think it was about 7 minutes ago I shut the camera off, and as you can see from the photo, it very subtly has brought out those top points of the wood grain back to a lighter color, and we're going to need that here in a second when we apply this X24. Now this is, to me, is transparent yellow. It's not clear, or it wouldn't be yellow, but it is transparent, and that's what, you know, same thing you use for signal lights and tail lights and all that on your cars. So we give that a little bit of a roll up here until she's nice and mixed, which I was doing it before I turned the camera on, so it's already mixed. So, and then we're going to get a healthy amount, like I say, a good amount of paint into that brush, because we want it to flow off. We don't want to be pulling brush strokes on this. Okay, so here we are. We're going to start at one end, and we're going to apply that yellow all the way down, all the way down. I dripped it on there. That's really bad, but anyways, okay, so we've got that covered in our transparent yellow, and we're gonna let that sit and dry. Now that's gonna take a little while to dry. That stuff doesn't exactly like to dry very quickly. For some reason, it just gets really tacky really quickly. All right, everybody, the transparent yellow has dried, and I have coated it, and I forgot to mention this, I've coated it in a clear coat. Now I've chosen an enamel clear coat because we're about to put a black wash on it to give it that aged look, at least to start, and I don't want it mixing with the clear coat I just put on and then mixing with the paint, so I put an enamel clear coat on here just so this stuff sits on here and it won't penetrate it, okay? Just a little tip and a little secret that I use. I already did that, so it should be okay. This is a black wash that I made when a bottle of Tamiya Flat Black got down so far. I filled it all the way back up again with the proper thinner from Tamiya, the X20A, and made my own black wash. It's very, very dark, but it comes off very nicely. So, and we're gonna do that right now. Okay, so we're just gonna run it. Oh, what happened there, George? It's dried up already. Just gonna run it down like that. That's it. That's it. That's all. Let it dry a bit. See you in a minute. Okay, so that's been drying up for a couple minutes, and we're just gonna take a piece of paper towel and just kind of wipe with the grain. Helps if I look at what I'm doing. And you'll see some of it comes off, some of it stays behind and gives it that aged look, like it's a little bit worn. And we're going to add to that worn look here in just a minute. Once the tackiness wears off of this, let's give it 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to the very next step. All right, and everything's all dried up here now, and we're ready for the final stage. It's really glossy. It's still kind of glossy from the yellow, and it was glossy on the Michael Myers kit too. But the final detail to making this look like old varnished wood that's on a deck is to sand it ever so lightly. Now this, I'm going to start with it. This is a 600 grit sanding stick, so it's not going to do very much, and I'm not even pushing on it. I'm just kind of running it over the top just to kind of knock off some of that glossy coating and the darkness on the top, and bring out some of that nice light tan that we dry brushed on here before we put the yellow on. So we're just trying to get through that top layer of the yellow on the high parts, just to kind of make it look a little more worn. And there we have it. Doesn't take much. It's the little short steps that give you the most detail, it seems. Now, what I've done here on the other side, just to show you, so I want to peel this off, and I'll zoom it in so you can see it, obviously. I did one on this side previous to it, but it doesn't want to come off. Let's just, there we go. There we go. Don't argue with me, you goofy thing. I think this is the right side. Yeah, this is the right one. Okay, so I did this one just before the one we're doing. Now the difference here is I haven't sanded this one, so we're going to sand it right now and get it to match. This is just a junk piece of plastic. I can't even remember what this came off of, to be quite honest with you, but it's going to, now that it's all painted up, it's going to end up on something, I'll tell you that much. But we'll just give this a little light sand just to finish this one off. I think I may have put the black wash on in different order with this one, but still, it's looking pretty decent. So that's how I paint that style of wood. Okay, well that'll about wrap things up here for painting wood in this particular style. Something for you to stick in your pocket and keep in the back of your mind for the next time you've got some wood that comes up that you want to paint in a different style. Until next time, I'm Jay. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to challenge yourself.